Hello, and welcome to Now Where Were We? A series of short videos about the history of Olympia, Lacey, and surrounding areas. Your host for this program is Deborah Ross. In this series, Deb takes us to locations that inform us about the history of our community. She also visits with local historians. We welcome your feedback and suggestions.
Hello, and welcome to Now Where Were We, an ongoing series of short videos about the history of Olympia, Lacey, and surrounding areas. I'm Deborah Ross. And today we're continuing with our series that I've been calling By the Decades. We are up to the 1920s. I'm going to be talking about a couple of formerly unrelated businesses that transformed the look of Olympia and surrounding areas, that had two things in common. One is that they took advantage of the abundant timber resources of our area, and the other is that they were founded by Scandinavian immigrants. Most histories of Scandinavian immigration in the Pacific Northwest focus on the 1880s, when there were vast influxes of Scandinavians, largely working in industrial areas and in the timber business. And in fact, by the turn of the 20th century, a quarter of the population of the Pacific Northwest identified as Scandinavian, either native-born Scandinavian or the children of Scandinavian immigrants. We're filming in the port of Olympia in an area of mixed development of log yards, condominiums, restaurants, and law offices. But in the 1920s, this area would have looked vastly different. It would have been a hive of industrial activity with plumes of black smoke emitting from the factories that were here, and hundreds of workers coming to work in the canning factories that lined the shore of Budd Inlet. And it is in the 1920s that we begin this part of our story. In 1920, two sawmill workers learned about a new material called plywood, made by peeling thin pieces from logs and gluing them together. One of them was J. Lucas, and one was Swedish-born Ed Westman. With a tiny amount of cash, they incorporated the Olympia Veneer Company, largely by enlisting the support of Swedish fraternal lodges in the area, both through their financial contributions and to be workers at the factory. Thus was born the first worker cooperative in the United States, called, quote, a pioneer venture, which was going to result in one of the most fantastic success stories in the history of American industry, close quote. Olympia Veneer was a pioneer in two respects. First, it significantly advanced techniques of creating veneer and plywood products. Second, it was a cooperative where all workers were owners of the company. In fact, they were all paid the same, from the president on down. In my research, I run across homes that were owned by Olympia Veneer workers. These owners are often described as the owners of Olympia Veneer. In actuality, they may have had jobs that would have otherwise been considered low status. They took great pride in their company and would write home to families in Sweden that they had achieved the American dream of owning a factory. Almost all of the workers were Scandinavian, either immigrants or of Scandinavian descent. Many of their descendants still live in the area, and until at least 1968, a few remaining stockholders were still receiving funds from the companies that eventually took over operations of the Veneer Company. To this day, Olympia Veneer is held up as a model of how a cooperative industry can work, both nationally and internationally. Unfortunately for us, not a shred remains of this important industry in the port of Olympia. The last remaining Olympia Veneer Company building was torn down in 2008. But in the 1920s, Olympia Veneer and a couple of other veneer companies that were founded after Olympia Veneer would have transformed the look of Olympia in the 1920s and throughout the 20th century. And we're now going to turn to another type of venture that also transformed the look of Olympia. And for that, we go over to West Olympia, just across from where we're standing now. We now turn to another success story, and this was based on a different business model, that is, the family-owned business. In 1919, 3 brothers, sons of Anton and Matilda Anderson from Sweden, arrived and bought an existing lumber mill, which they called Tumwater lumber mills on the Deschutes River. Within 3 years, 3 more brothers had joined the Andersons, and they formed a subsidiary called Tumwater Ready Cut Homes. I'm standing in the Rogers Street Local Historic District, which was formed specifically to showcase some of those homes. Like Olympia Veneer, the company took advantage of the plentiful timber in the area. The ready-cut homes consisted of packages of kit homes that could be ordered from a catalog. Thousands of pieces that went into each home were numbered and delivered to building sites where they would be assembled. The homes were mostly modest in size and based on traditional designs such as Dutch colonial, craftsman, and English builder. The homes included not only the shell, but interior features such as built-in cabinetry. Over 500 homes in the Olympia area alone were delivered and constructed. Many of them are still in existence and more are being discovered. Once you become familiar with some of the basic designs, you will start seeing them all over Olympia, Tumwater, and Lacey. Clusters of TLM homes are found throughout the area. Many of them are in the South Capitol neighborhood. In particular, several in a row on Columbia Street are called collectively Swede Row to recognize the Swedish ancestry of the Anderson brothers. Ironically, only one of the 6 brothers actually lived in a TLM home. That one is in the South Capitol neighborhood, and the legend is that he built it in order to showcase what a larger scale TLM home might look like. With the advent of Tumwater lumber mills, founded by 6 Swedish brothers, and the Olympia Veneer Company, founded by Swedish immigrants and staffed by immigrants from Scandinavia, Olympia was transformed in the 1920s in a way that could not have been anticipated only 10 or 20 years before.